I am Rachel Humphrey, interview host with It's Personal Stories, a hospitality podcast. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering personal success in the hospitality industry. And I am super excited today to be joined by Liam Brown of Marriott International. Liam, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you very much for having me on.
Liam, I want to jump right in because we're only going to have a little bit of time together today. But one of the incredible things about the hospitality industry, as you know, is that every leader can have a different path to leadership, which is very unique to them. So tell us a little bit about you, your journey, and how you ended up where you are today with Marriott.
Yeah, well, I always think in hospitality, oftentimes a lot of people can end up in hospitality more by accident than by design. So I was born in Dublin, grew up in Dublin. And, when I was a teenager, my father got me a job on the Irish railroad system, working on the dining cars. And at that time, there was a lot of, if you think back actually many, many years ago, railway companies oftentimes owned a lot of hotels. Canadian Pacific began that way. But there was a chain of hotels in Ireland called Great Southern Hotels. And I remember one year I was volunteered to go to a very, very high end restaurant in Dunleary that was run by Great Southern Hotels. And I worked for a remarkable man there, the maitre d' there, Barney Nicholson, who was a great guy. And I would say I characterize him as a fellow who gave me a lot of uh, advice in terms of what I should do. I mean, I thought, he said to me one time, "What do you want to do, Liam?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love your job, Barney," because he was the master of all he surveyed. And guests as they were going out would shake his hand, and there was a tip exchange there, and I thought he was the bee's knees and the cat's pajamas in terms of just a great guy to work for. He was tough and challenging, but it was always very clear what you needed to do. But anyway, he asked me one day, he said, "What do you want to do with your life, Liam?" And I said, "I want your job, Barney." And he said, "I left school at 12 years of age." He said, "I've exceeded all my expectations in life." He said, "You need to make sure you finish college and go into hotel management." He said, "I think you do very well there." And at the time, I was contemplating being a teacher and various other career choices. And but I decided I went to hospitality school. I got a business degree and a hospitality degree, and kind of the rest is a little bit of history. I worked in many, many, many different jobs, all in for the. Even though I still characterize myself today as an operator, I think most people would say somebody who's been in corporate as long as I have been is no longer an operator. But that's where my heart lies. I have a deep empathy for the people who do the work each and every day of our business. But yeah, for the first, many years of my career, I was involved in running hotels, restaurants, and all that sort of good stuff. And I was very fortunate to get to the United States, and I worked for a small New England hotel company that only had 5 hotels, and that was bought by Marriott, and that's how I ended up working for Marriott in 1990. So I'm 35 years with Marriott this year. Actually, 36, because I started working in Appleton Inns in 1989, and they grandfathered my time. So
Well, that's incredible how one person can see something in you and have such a pivotal role in shaping how things play out for you. Something we hear frequently. Certainly, the length of time you've been at Marriott is a standout. One of the interesting things that I have really taken away from this podcast the last couple years is how many industry leaders really credit their own curiosity for a lot of their career path, whether it was learning new aspects of the business, meeting new people. Is that something you would describe yourself as innately curious? And as a follow up to that, I want to ask you, tell me something you're curious about today, and it can be hospitality related or not.
yeah, I think, look, anybody. I mean, if you want to advance yourself in life, I think curiosity is a key skill to have. You got to be curious, and you got to cultivate it. And I think I honestly believe that began with my mother and father. My father was an avid reader, and and always encouraged us to read books. So I think reading, and even when I was a regional with Marriott, I used to always challenge my general managers as to what was the last book that they had read. I'd always encourage people to read a particular book that I had found interesting. And they don't all have to be leadership or business books. They can be anything that stretches the mind. I mean, you got to continue to stretch your mind, and that curiosity keeps your mind nimble. It keeps developing the various skill sets that you have. And I think there's also a very much a serendipitous nature to it, that reading something a couple of weeks ago and you kind of have an opportunity to act on it. I remember being in sale. I used to read the Wall Street Journal every day, and I remember reading an article about ABB, Asa Brown Bavaria, was the GM of the Courtyard in Hartford. And I had been trying to get this piece of sales business out of this guy in ABB forever and ever. Anyway, I had a final meeting with the guy, and I said, "Hey, I saw that ABB just recently signed a deal to develop a power plant in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia." And the guy looks at me and says, "Oh," he says, "you read that?" He said, "That was my deal." And I was saying to myself, I know I'm in, and I got, and I think I think we've done a lot of work to try and get the business and everything, but it was the one thing that got us over the hump. And it was just one thing that I'd read a week before, and it had stuck in my mind. And as you read the paper, whether it whatever, or periodicals or magazines or books, you find a piece of information that is inevitably of use to you at someplace down the road in terms of what you do. So I think uh, curiosity is also continuing to invest in yourself, because the very act of being curious is trying to understand things, understand situations, understand challenges and opportunities, and how to navigate through them. And then I would say the one thing I'm really interested in and trying to figure out is AI and the implications it has for our business, in terms of we've always strived for this high tech and high touch, and is this the thing that might enable all of that in a very, very meaningful way, so that we can better understand our customers and our associates, and and figure out how do we give our guests what they want, when they want, and how they want it.
Well, I think a lot of people are curious about AI for sure, and love the topic of reading, whether it is leadership style or not, which begs the question of what is the most recent book you've read?
Oh, most recent book I read is what's the name? It's by that the guy who he's Noah Hariri. It's actually all about AI and how the implications of the future. Now he conjures up all sorts of bad scenarios and challenging. It could potentially go the wrong way, but it also could potentially go the right way. And he's a great writer. I mean, he speaks of the history of the human race as really being one of storytelling, and that the ability for seven people to live on a planet together. And he talks about the fact that we share 99% of our DNA with the bonobo monkey, but once they get to a band of more than 50, uh, the society breaks down. But we have the ability to have 7 billion or so living on the planet, and we're, for the most part, able to live and work together. And a lot of it is just storytelling, and it is storytelling that binds us all together. And storytelling, I always think, is an incredible part of culture. And this book talks about the dangers with AI and culture, and the promise of it all as well too. But I shall get the proper name and the author, and email it to you, so you can add it as a subtext to the podcast.
Definitely can do. Storytelling is actually an interesting segue, because public speaking can be, for some people, an incredible um, incredibly important part of their path to leadership, but for some people, very debilitating and one of the biggest hurdles. You do a lot of public speaking. I've been fortunate enough to source you many times for different stages. Talk about a little bit about your public speaking journey. Is it something you're comfortable with today? Has that always been the case? How do you prepare? What are the Liam secrets on public speaking?
I think I'm reasonably comfortable with it today, but in the early days, oh my God, it terrified me. I remember reading a piece on public speaking that said some people fear public speaking more than they fear death.
I've heard that.
And the first I one of the first big ones I ever did was a residence in GM's conference where I was the kind of the host, the MC, and all that kind of stuff. And oh my God, I was very nervous. And part of it was just timing, reading the audience. I started speaking before they'd stopped, applauding. And yeah, it was. I felt I did a terrible job. But how does one prepare? I mean, I think preparation is everything. You got to know what your message is, know what your story is, and I've been through many. I'm a great believer in go take a public speaking class where they videotape you and give you the feedback. One of the best piece of advice I ever got was even just listen to the radio and listen to how a commentator speaks and how there's cadence in the voice. There's an up and down or a sing song to the conversation. There's a way of speaking that should resonate or that gets your message across. But the most important thing is to be prepared. Know your material. Know what the message is. There's all the things about primacy and recency. Tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and tell them what you told them. So I think preparation is the key, and you just got to relax and be comfortable. There's a few little things you can do, behind stage where you kind of get the tension out of your body, and you take a few deep breaths, and be confident that you've done the preparation, and then just go and do it. And I have found that where I have feel I have done a very poor job is oftentimes in maybe not doing that little extra bit of preparation. You can never over prepare. I think you just got to get very, very comfortable with your material and your message, and know your audience as well too. Very important to know your audience. Who am I talking to? Am I talking to our general managers? You got to know what they want to hear as well.
That's so great. Such great advice. You actually have a couple of things in common with me. I also believe there's no such thing as over preparation. And a little bit of breath work before I step on stage has actually made a huge difference for me, just kind of calming those nerves a little bit so that I can think a little bit more clearly. But great advice in there.
And
Liam,
oh,
I
and one other piece of
want
advice I got too says always remember the audience wants you to succeed.
that's
You
very
know, sometimes you go out there and you think, oh my God, I'm making a fool of myself. But they'll forgive you a lot. They forgive you a lot. They want you to succeed.
And if you do make a fool of yourself, you get up the next day and you do it again, and no one will remember it. So you'll be
Absolutely.
just fine. Um, I do want to turn for a second to you have always, or at least since I have known you, been incredibly involved with associations, nonprofits, other things. I know you're the on the board, the executive committee for HLA. You've been very involved with AHOA. In addition to giving back and building relationships, what are some of the ways that your involvement with some of these organizations outside of Marriott have helped to grow your leadership skills, or maybe something you learned in these roles that's different from what you learn in your everyday role?
I- Well, I always think it's a great opportunity to spend time with people who are across our business, or maybe not even necessarily directly across our business, not necessarily in the hotel business, but in other aspects of our business, other aspects of hospitality, service, transportation. And I think that, look, every person you meet is an opportunity to learn, uh, ask them great questions about how do they get to where they what are their ideas, thoughts, and solutions about some of the challenges that we might be facing. I always find that the room is full of different different people with different perspectives, and I think the ability to be able to tap into those various conversations, those various perspectives is very helpful to me. I mean, I always come out feeling very, at least better informed and better educated than I was before. I think the ability to work across competitors and various other disciplines from a broader, more legal, political kind of trying to shape a broader narrative for either our industry or for the country is a really good thing to do. Um, yeah, I find I mean I think personally they're great ways to get some self development and some growth, and you learn something, and you have the ability then to partner with people who at some stage you never know when you might need to reach out and ask for advice or counsel on a particular issue that they have an area of expertise in.
That's some great advice. No, that's true. And I like the idea too of obviously being in a room with different people with different perspectives, but different parts of the industry, different aspects of things to then bring that back with you. I want to stick to that idea you just said about developing and your personal growth as well. As you transitioned, whether it be from on property to the corporate side, or maybe from one role to another, it might have become evident that there were skills that you would need to be successful that you either hadn't learned in school or you hadn't learned in the role before that. Can you give me an example of maybe something that you knew early on would be an important skill for you in whatever role you were going to tackle next, and how you set about to develop it?
Uh, I think a good example I think is my own sense of financial acumen in terms of we know in a hotel operations you do know from a P&L perspective what uh, the key financial metrics are, how to drive success. But oftentimes, the financial underpinning of the hotel itself and real estate financing is something that you, as an operator, you potentially have a little bit of a gap with. So I always felt from a big, broad financial perspective that was a factor that I needed to work on and develop. So about 25 years ago, I went to the University of Maryland and I did an MBA, a part-time MBA. And so I had a full-time job, and every other week I was Friday. I thought Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I spent over at the Smith School of Business. And the first 30 days I thought it was going to kill me because it was so hard. Just in terms of I hadn't been in a classroom in many years, and you still had a day job and all that sort of good stuff. But it's amazing what you can get used to and how you can rise to the occasion. But I thought it was one of the best things I ever did. And again, it was a piece of, there was a whole range of people there, not in the hospitality, but a couple of people in hospitality, but a lot of people all doing either defense work, lawyers, technology, and just the engagement with them on business, how they thought about business, was a remarkable gift to me. I really enjoyed that, and I feel it also helped me from a career perspective, and that goes back again to the notion of curiosity and always being every day you should be trying to learn something and figure out something new or understand something in a more meaningful way. But that's one example of where I always felt I had a little bit of a deficiency in terms of any kind of sophisticated financial transactions, as you might call them, a little, more than just a P&L or a regional roll up of properties, but just the financial underpinning of our business, and how, from a real estate perspective, how our owners make money and how Marriott International makes money, and having a clear understanding of that, I think, is very helpful.
Isn't it interesting how you went for the financial acumen, but then you also took out of it how much you could get used to when you started this new routine of both the corporate world and going back to school, or what you could learn from others who had such different career backgrounds or career experiences
Yeah.
than you were having. So going into the opportunity for one thing, but really getting so much more out of it through
Yeah.
the experience. I want to stick with the idea of continuing to grow and evolve and talk a little bit about your personal leadership evolution from a couple of different standpoints. I hear a lot that people say, "Hey, I can notice in myself some things that have gotten better over time in my leadership, and maybe some things that are not getting better over time, or that are even getting worse over time." Can you think of something in your own journey that has either gotten better over time or something that you're working on that you're still trying to get there?
Yeah, that's a, I was dwelling on that question a little bit. Um, I would venture to say that I always believe my leadership style always continues to need work. I think one of my challenges that I've never mastered is that not get I don't know, this sounds like a little strange, that like not getting involved in the details, not undermining my folks, right? And it's
Mhm.
not an intent to undermine, it's always an intent to help. Like if I've got a relationship with an owner and we have some challenging issues to work through, I do have a tendency to kind of promote the solution myself because I believe that I know how this person thinks and what the issue is and what the solution is. And that's one of the things that I constantly chant, that I should not. You need to let people grow. You need to give them the room to make decisions. Um, Jack Welch had a great line. He said, if hire managers who can make decisions, because he said even if they only get half of them right, they're batting 500. They'd be a Hall of Famer if they were playing baseball. And it is only through you really don't learn a whole lot from your successful decisions because you believe that they come naturally and you did all the right things. But when you make a mistake and you make a decision that didn't turn out the way it should have, that's where the greatest lessons in life are. And I have a desire to over help in terms of somebody not making a bad decision, so to speak. But oftentimes, bad decisions are a great. They're the best education of all. I mean, I look at my career, and the most valuable lessons are the ones that, oh, I'll never make that decision again. That was a bad one. You just kind of, that has to, and you look and you really look to say, why did I make that decision? How did I make that decision? And try and figure out what valuable lessons you can glean from it. But I think leadership is something that you really need to continue to work on and seek feedback. I look to great mentors, like, when I think about Bill Marriott is just a remarkable gentleman. He's very pithy in his wisdom. He will challenge you and give you all the room to go and make whatever decisions you want. And he'll challenge you, and he'll always, grab you by the arm and saying, you're doing a terrific job. I'm so proud of you. So, I mean, simple lessons in leadership like that, they embed themselves in you, but they're oftentimes you forget to practice them. He's a remarkable note writer, and I try and emulate that and try to be, make sure you find the time for, because a handwritten note is worth far more than an email or a phone call. And you go around to offices where GMs would have gotten a little note from, and it's what did it cost Mr. Marriott to put that in an envelope? A card and an envelope and a stamp, and it's in $100 frame on his desk. You know, it's little things like that make the most difference, I think.
Well, I can relate to the handwritten thank you note. I come from a long school of the importance of a handwritten note, but I also love the concept, of course, of learning more from some of your setbacks or challenges than from some of your successes. I think that's great advice as well. You talked a lot about lessons, so reflecting on the past year or two, what is one of the biggest lessons that you've had, and how will that impact some of your leadership moving forward?
Uh, you know, Again, going back to, well, Mr. Marriott's lesson about success is never final. I mean, as we navigated through the year last year, we had some relationship issues with an owner that went a little bit sideways, and I thought we had it all. I thought we had it all sorted out and everything, and I guess the lesson I learned from that was, you shouldn't, don't be making assumptions. Make sure you have all the facts, and again, preparation, and it was yeah, it was quite a thorny issue to resolve, and it did get resolved eventually. But there was a lot of challenging times in the meantime, and I guess my lesson from that was. Uh, uh, just to make sure that don't assume that I know what the outcome is going to be, because I made a major misread of the situation, and my lesson from that was to make sure that I have all the facts and dig a little bit deeper, and don't be relying on the fact that I had a long relationship with this person and able to be resolved. This issue was a little bit more complicated than that. That was one of my biggest lessons this year.
I like that, having all of the facts and not making assumptions. In your roles at Marriott over the last, oh my gosh, I guess 35 plus years, you've had the opportunity to build and develop a lot of teams. Is there a common thread that you see in your hiring of that you're looking for when you're looking to bring people onto the team, when you're identifying rising leaders that you want to continue to develop? Is there something that you're looking for innately in each of those?
I think there's one thing that's very important to have, that people that you can understand, that you can quickly glean, and hopefully be able to glean very quickly, that somebody will do what they say they're going to do. I mean, in our business, I think you need enthusiasm and a desire to serve, because we are in the hospitality business. But you also, and in any aspect of life, those who succeed are the people who kind of mean what they say and say what they mean. And they might not have all the skills yet, but I think if you have that internal kind of drive that says, I made a commitment and I'm going to keep to it. I think that to me is very, very critical. And then also the other ability to tell a story, and I think that is broad enough for any leader to really work on their skills, as to, because if you don't have a story, if you don't have a narrative about you, somebody else will have a narrative about you, or will
Very true.
create the narrative for you. So I would say, listen, this is hard work. Never, is a very good thing. The ability to work hard, but most importantly, the ability the to just to do what you said you were going, what you say you're going to do, and to be able to get, you can quickly pick that up, I think, in terms of some key questions about, just asking people some successes or conversation. Have you ever had a boss who, kind of challenged you on a particular thing? How did you respond, and what did you do? And I think when people talk about, and here's the action steps I took and I made it happen, and they take great pleasure and pride in that, that they, accomplished something that was critical.
Well, when I first started practicing law, I had a judge tell me that that credibility of doing what you say you're going to do in front of the court becomes one of the most important ways of building your career. So, different industry, certainly, but have never forgotten that. If you're going to tell me you're going to do something, then I hope that you're going to follow up and do it. And then you're going to let me know you did it. And then the next time you tell me you're going to do it, I'm going to know that you will. So,
Yeah.
that is one very relatable for me.
Yeah, I think it's a common thread across life. Just the ability to say, I made a commitment and I'm going to follow through. It's one
Well,
thing I try and instill in my children. Don't tell me you're going to do something and then don't do it. It's the most disappointing thing. So,
isn't that interesting again, though, that how that same type of leadership advice applies across different channels of your life, not just when you're sitting in your corporate seat. We're going to run short on time. I know that there's a lot of ground that I want to cover that we won't get to. So I'm going to wrap up with two quick questions today. As you're sitting here today and you're thinking about young Liam working in the dining car on the railway, and then where you are today, 35 years later with Marriott, what is some advice you'd give to your younger self, either about something you wish you knew then that you know today, or about how things work out for you?
Now, I would say I wish I'd come to America 10 years earlier. I mean, I wouldn't change much about my life other than my earlier self. I tell him not to be so. I'm even though I put on a good face, I'm a very. I worry a lot about stuff, and I would say that in my 36 years, I've worried about stuff that maybe perhaps a little too unnecessarily. So I'd say be a little calmer on the worry side of things. No, worry about the right things as opposed to everything.
Mm,
Yeah, but my other piece of advice: if you can get to America earlier, go. It's a great country and great opportunities.
I love that.
That's what I'd say to my younger self.
And I love the worry less as well. Well, as we wrap up, thinking about the motto of It's Personal Stories, which is empowering personal success, do you have one final piece of advice you'd like to share with our audience?
The one I would say about do what you say you're going to do, but the other piece is your story or presentation skills. There are times uh, when I would say the biggest opportunity a person has to be able to articulate a better story about the piece of data that I have been presented with. What does it actually mean? And what are the compelling pieces about it that should sway me one way or the other in terms of trying to figure out uh, what do we need to do here when we're identifying a problem, an opportunity, whether it's a whole slew of information about some various owners and what's going on, but the ability to be able to synthesize it in a very few keywords in a story that is meaningful and makes sense. And then the data in the presentation or the document supports that. So presentation skills in the sense of not so much the document itself, which is often, lots of great data and everything, but what does it all mean? And what's most important in it? If there's three or four critical salient points, how do you kind of amplify that and amplify your story, and then be very clear on what the ask is or recommendation. You should be able to say this, and this is because of this. This is what we need to do, and those are skills that you just got to continue to burnish and work on. I think in terms of as a young leader trying to figure out and navigate one's career.
Well, that is great advice. And I appreciate you joining me today for our audience. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. You can find more great interviews at itspersonalstories.com. But Liam, thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do for the industry and for sharing a little bit of your story and some of your insights with us today.
Not at all. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.